What if the greatest battle of World War II was fought not with guns and tanks, but with whispers and shadows? In the realm of warfare, truth is often the first casualty, but in 1944, lies became the most potent weapon. As Hitler's war machine devoured Europe, the Allies hatched a plan so audacious it bordered on madness. As the sun set on the horizon of 1942, the world held its breath. Europe, once a melting pot of cultures and nations, now lay beneath the shadow of the swastika. Hitler's relentless war machine had devoured country after country, from the windswept shores of Norway to the sun-baked sands of North Africa. The Nazi Empire seemed unstoppable, its iron grip tightening with each passing day. Yet amidst the encroaching darkness, one island nation stood defiant. Britain, battered but unbroken, remained a beacon of hope in the stormy seas of conflict. From its fog-shrouded shores, the last bastion of Western resistance faced the might of the Third Reich. But hope alone would not turn the tide of war. The Allies knew that to break Hitler's stranglehold on Europe, they would need to attempt the impossible, an invasion so audacious, so monumental in scale that it would shake the very foundations of the Nazi regime. This was to be no ordinary military operation. It would require more than just men, guns, and ships. It would demand something far more potent: deception on a scale never before attempted in the history of warfare. Enter Operation Bodyguard, a web of lies so intricate, so convincing, that it would fool the world's most feared military machine. This is the story of how a group of brilliant minds crafted an illusion so perfect, it changed the course of history. From inflatable tanks to double agents, from fake radio transmissions to Hollywood-style props, every trick in the book would be employed to pull off the greatest con in military history. As we get into this story of daring and deception, prepare to witness how the art of misdirection became the secret weapon that helped topple an empire and liberate a continent. This is Operation Bodyguard, the deception that changed World War II. In a nondescript London office, a plan was brewing that would rewrite the rules of modern warfare. While Hitler built his Atlantic Wall, the Allies constructed something far more powerful, an elaborate illusion. It began with a simple idea: to fool the enemy. It ended by changing the course of history. The year was 1941. Enter the London Controlling Section, LCS, a clandestine unit tasked with what seemed like an impossible mission: to outfox the foxes, to deceive the masters of blitzkrieg at their own game. Led by the brilliant and eccentric Colonel John Bevan, this motley crew of soldiers, spies, and civilians would become the architects of what would later be known as Operation Bodyguard. But why Bodyguard? The answer lies in the words of the indomitable British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. During a pivotal meeting with Allied leaders in Tehran in 1943, Churchill, his eyes twinkling with mischief and determination, uttered a phrase that would become the operation's namesake. "In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies." This poetic yet pragmatic statement encapsulated the essence of what the LCS sought to achieve. They weren't just planning to tell a few fibs or plant some false information. No, they were about to construct an entire alternate reality, a grand illusion so convincing that it would shield the truth of the Allied invasion plans from Hitler's prying eyes. Operation Bodyguard was to be a weave of deception, made from countless threads of misinformation, misdirection, and pure audacity. It would encompass multiple sub-operations, each designed to mislead, confuse, and ultimately paralyze the German High Command. From the frigid fjords of Norway to the sun-drenched beaches of Greece, phantom armies would materialize, paper invasions would be planned, and an entire ecosystem of lies would be cultivated. At the heart of this grand deception lay Operation Fortitude, the crown jewel of Bodyguard, aimed at convincing the Germans that the inevitable Allied invasion would land anywhere but its true target, the beaches of Normandy. As the plans for Bodyguard took shape, its architects knew they were embarking on an unprecedented journey into the realm of strategic deception. They were about to rewrite the rules of warfare, proving that in the shadow world of espionage and counterintelligence, a well-crafted lie could be more powerful than 1,000 tanks. Little did Hitler know, but the seeds of his downfall were being sown not on the battlefields of Europe, but in the quiet, smoke-filled rooms of London, where imagination and cunning were forging the most potent weapon of all: doubt. How do you hide an army? By creating another one out of thin air. In the high-stakes game of war, Operation Fortitude was the Allies' ultimate bluff. This masterpiece of misdirection was split into two primary theatres: Fortitude North and Fortitude South, each designed to keep the Germans guessing and their forces misallocated. Fortitude North spun a tale of an impending Allied assault on Nazi-occupied Norway. The British Fourth Army, a phantom force supposedly stationed in Scotland, was brought to life through an intricate web of deception. Radio operators engaged in elaborate fake transmissions, discussing troop movements and supply logistics for an army that existed only in the ether. To lend credibility to this northern threat, the Allies went to extraordinary lengths. They constructed mock military installations that could be spotted by German reconnaissance planes. Dummy aircraft dotted airfields, their silhouettes carefully crafted to fool aerial photographers. The charade reached its zenith when General Bernard Montgomery himself was seen arriving in Scotland, lending his considerable reputation to the illusion of a northern offensive. Meanwhile, Fortitude South focused on convincing the Germans that the main Allied thrust would target Pas-de-Calais, the closest point between England and France. This operation centered around the fictional 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG, allegedly poised to strike across the narrowest part of the English Channel. The choice of General George Patton to lead FUSAG was a stroke of genius. Respected and feared by the Germans for his aggressive tactics, Patton's association with the Phantom Army lent it an air of menace and credibility. The Allies staged elaborate ruses to support this illusion, including the deployment of inflatable tanks and wooden aircraft in southeastern England. But Fortitude's true brilliance lay in its subtle manipulation of German expectations. Rather than trying to completely hide the build-up in Normandy, an impossible task given its scale, the Allies sought to convince Hitler that it was merely a diversion. They wanted the Germans to believe that Normandy was a feint designed to draw forces away from the real invasion at Pas-de-Calais. This strategy of misdirection extended to the physical realm. While fake encampments sprung up around Dover, the actual invasion bases near Normandy were carefully camouflaged. Military buildings were disguised as civilian structures, and vehicles were hidden under netting and foliage. The success of Fortitude hinged on selling not just a lie, but a plausible alternative to the truth. It played on German preconceptions, exploited their fears, and ultimately paralyzed their decision-making at the crucial moment. By the time D-Day arrived, Hitler was convinced that Normandy was a ruse, expecting the real blow to fall at Pas-de-Calais. Operation Fortitude shows the power of imagination and the art of misdirection. It proved that in warfare, what the enemy believes can be just as important as the reality on the ground. In the shadowy world of wartime espionage, Operation Bodyguard elevated the game to unprecedented heights. At its core was the British double-cross system, a counterintelligence operation so audacious it bordered on the unbelievable. The premise was simple yet daring: turn every German spy in Britain into a double agent working for the Allies. By late 1943, British intelligence had achieved the near impossible. They had identified and turned every known German agent operating on British soil. These spies now faced a stark choice: collaborate or face execution. The incentive was clear, and thus began one of the most elaborate misinformation campaigns in history. Among these double agents, two stood out for their exceptional contributions to the deception effort. The first was Wolf Dietrich Christian Schmidt, codenamed Tate. Captured within 24 hours of parachuting into England in 1940, Tate spent the next 4 years feeding a steady stream of false information back to his German handlers. From the seclusion of various safe houses, he painted a picture of Allied preparations that was as detailed as it was fictitious. But perhaps the most remarkable of these double agents was Juan Pujol Garcia, known to the British as Garbo. A Spanish citizen who volunteered his services to the Allies, Garbo created an entire network of 27 fictitious sub-agents supposedly spread across Britain. His reports were so convincing, so rich in detail and apparent inside knowledge, that he was awarded the Iron Cross by Hitler himself for his exemplary service to the Reich. The art of running these double agents was a delicate balancing act. Feed the Germans too much information or details too specific, and suspicion would arise. The key was to blend minor truths with major fabrications, creating a line of misinformation that seemed authentic when individual threads were tugged and tested. This technique, known as baiting, involved releasing accurate but inconsequential data that could be verified by German intelligence. Once confirmed, this information lent credibility to the more significant lies that followed. The double agents reported on trivial matters such as uniform insignias and vehicle markings, allowing the Germans to piece together what seemed like an accurate picture of Allied preparations. The success of this espionage network was greatly enhanced by a closely guarded British secret: the cracking of the German Enigma code. With the ability to intercept and decipher German communications, British intelligence could monitor how their misinformation was being received and adjust their strategy accordingly. This insight was invaluable in maintaining the credibility of their double agents and ensuring the overall success of the deception. As D-Day approached, the double agents played a crucial role in selling the Fortitude deception. Garbo, in particular, transmitted urgent warnings about the Normandy landings, but always with the caveat that they were likely a diversion from the main assault. His timing was impeccable. The information arrived just late enough to prevent the Germans from reinforcing Normandy, but early enough to maintain his credibility. The double agents' work didn't end with the invasion. In the crucial days following D-Day, they continued to feed misinformation to the Germans, convincing them to hold forces in reserve for a phantom attack on Pas-de-Calais that would never come. The art of espionage, as practiced during Operation Bodyguard, was more than just lying. It was the careful cultivation of trust, the meticulous construction of false realities, and the delicate manipulation of enemy perceptions. It was a high-stakes game of chess played out in the shadows, where the pawns were bits of information, and the king was the very fate of the war itself. In this intricate dance of deception, the double agents of Operation Bodyguard didn't just fool Hitler's spy masters. They rewrote the rules of intelligence warfare for generations to come. The masterminds behind Operation Bodyguard understood that to sell their grand deception, they needed more than just whispers and fabricated intelligence reports. They needed to create a tangible, visible threat that German reconnaissance could observe and report back to their high command. Thus began one of the most elaborate and imaginative physical deception campaigns in military history. The cornerstone of this effort was the deployment of an entire fake army around Dover, complete with inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and canvas-covered trucks. These decoys, far from being crude props, were sophisticated mimics of real military hardware. The inflatable tanks, when viewed from the air, cast shadows identical to their steel counterparts. They could be driven around, leaving track marks in the soil, and were even fitted with hot plates to simulate engine heat for infrared cameras. This wasn't the first time such tactics had been employed. During World War I, British forces had used dummy tanks made of wood and canvas to deceive German observers. But by World War II, the art of deception had evolved dramatically. The inflatable decoys could be rapidly deployed and just as quickly deflated and moved, creating the illusion of a highly mobile force. To complement the fake armored divisions, the Allies constructed entire phantom airfields. Wooden aircraft were carefully positioned and regularly moved to simulate active squadrons. Ground crews would bustle around these mock planes, performing maintenance rituals visible to high-altitude reconnaissance flights. The illusion extended to the seas as well. Operation Glimmer involved small ships towing large, radar-reflective barges to create the impression of a massive invasion fleet heading towards Pas-de-Calais. Meanwhile, operators on board used special devices to simulate the radio traffic of a much larger force. In the weeks leading up to D-Day, the Allies took their deception to new heights with Operation Taxable. RAF bombers dropped clouds of aluminium strips, known as window, in precise patterns over the English Channel. To German radar operators, these appeared as massive convoys of ships heading towards Pas-de-Calais. The physical deceptions weren't limited to hardware. The Allies also manipulated their actual troop movements to support the illusion. Real units were marched back and forth in full view of German reconnaissance, creating the impression of a much larger force than actually existed. In perhaps the most audacious move, entire fake military bases were constructed. These included barracks, mess halls, and even entertainment facilities, all designed to support the illusion of a massive build-up in southeastern England. Local civilians were brought into the act, with towns near these fake bases suddenly seeing an influx of uniformed soldiers frequenting their pubs and shops. The scale and intricacy of these physical deceptions were staggering. It wasn't enough to fool distant observers. The Allies had to create an illusion that could withstand close scrutiny. Every detail, from the worn paths between tents in a fake encampment to the precisely angled radar reflectors on dummy landing craft, was meticulously planned and executed. This massive effort in physical deception did more than just support the broader narrative of fortitude. It created a tangible, visible threat that German intelligence could see with their own eyes, lending crucial credibility to the entire Operation Bodyguard deception. While fortitude formed the core of Operation Bodyguard, a constellation of smaller supporting operations played crucial roles in creating deception. These operations, each ingenious in its own right, added layers of complexity and credibility to the overall deception plan. Operation Pluto, Pipelines Under the Ocean, was one such endeavor. While primarily designed to supply fuel to the invasion forces, it also served a deceptive purpose. The construction of these undersea pipelines was impossible to completely hide, so the Allies incorporated it into their deception. They leaked information suggesting that the pipelines were being laid to support the Phantom invasion at Pas-de-Calais, further reinforcing the illusion of a major assault in that area. Another audacious ploy was Operation Copperhead, a mission so outlandish it seemed plucked from a spy novel. The plan centered around M.E. Clifton James, a British actor with an uncanny resemblance to General Bernard Montgomery. In the days leading up to D-Day, James was sent on a very public tour of Gibraltar and North Africa, convincing German intelligence that Montgomery, and by extension the Allied invasion force, was nowhere near Normandy. The deception extended to the skies with Operation Titanic. On the night before D-Day, the Royal Air Force dropped hundreds of dummy paratroopers across Normandy, far from the actual drop zones. These dummies, equipped with fireworks and recordings of battle sounds, created chaos behind German lines, drawing vital resources away from the real landing zones. In the naval sphere, Operations Glimmer and Taxable went beyond radar deceptions. Small boats equipped with powerful speakers broadcast the sounds of a massive armada, complete with shouted orders and the clanking of anchor chains. To German coastal defenders, it sounded as if an entire invasion fleet was bearing down on them, in precisely the wrong location. Even the world of diplomacy wasn't immune from the web of deception. Operation Graham involved a deliberate indiscretion by the British ambassador to Turkey, suggesting that the Allies were planning major operations in the Balkans. This diplomatic sleight of hand helped to keep German forces tied down in southeastern Europe, far from the Normandy beaches. These supporting operations, each clever in its own right, combined to create a multifaceted deception that left German intelligence reeling. By attacking the problem from multiple angles, on land, at sea, in the air, and even in the world of diplomacy, the Allies ensured that no matter where the Germans looked, they would find evidence supporting the grand lie of Operation Bodyguard. As dawn broke on June 6, 1944, the true test of Operation Bodyguard began. The success of the Allied landings at Normandy marked not the end, but a crucial new phase in the deception campaign. The challenge now was to maintain the illusion long enough to allow the beachhead to solidify and expand. In the immediate aftermath of the landings, German high command remained skeptical. Years of meticulous deception had done their work. Hitler himself insisted that Normandy was merely a diversion, expecting the real blow to fall at Pas-de-Calais. This hesitation proved critical, allowing the Allies precious time to establish their foothold. The architects of Bodyguard had anticipated this moment. They knew that the deception couldn't simply stop with the invasion, it had to evolve. In the days and weeks following D-Day, a new narrative was carefully constructed and fed to German intelligence. Double agents, still deep in their roles, transmitted urgent messages suggesting that the Normandy landings were indeed a feint. They spoke of a larger force, still poised to strike at Pas-de-Calais, led by the Phantom 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG, This imaginary threat kept substantial German forces pinned down, unable to reinforce Normandy. It wasn't until September, nearly 3 months after D-Day, that the Germans finally accepted the truth. There would be no second invasion. By then, it was too late. The Allied forces had broken out of Normandy, Paris had been liberated, and the German army in France was in full retreat. The success of this sustained deception lay in its flexibility. As the situation on the ground changed, so too did the narrative being fed to the Germans. Each new piece of misinformation was carefully crafted to explain the evolving battle situation, while still maintaining the core illusion of a larger threat yet to come. In the end, Operation Bodyguard didn't just deceive the Germans about the location of the invasion, it continued to shape their strategic thinking long after the first Allied soldiers had set foot on French soil. This prolonged misdirection proved to be as crucial to the success of the Normandy campaign as the initial deception had been to the landings themselves. The ripples of Operation Bodyguard extended far beyond the beaches of Normandy, profoundly influencing not just the outcome of World War II, but the very nature of modern warfare and intelligence operations. In the immediate term, Bodyguard's success was measured in lives saved and ground gained. By convincing the Germans to misallocate their forces, the operation significantly reduced Allied casualties during the crucial initial stages of the invasion. Estimates suggest that tens of thousands of lives were spared due to the weakened German response at Normandy. Strategically, Bodyguard bought the Allies precious time. The weeks of German indecision following D-Day allowed the beachhead to be secured and expanded, setting the stage for the liberation of Western Europe. This momentum shift marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany, hastening the conclusion of the war in Europe. But Bodyguard's legacy extends far beyond its immediate military impact. It revolutionized the role of deception in warfare, elevating it from a tactical tool to a strategic asset. Post-war military doctrine in many nations began to incorporate large-scale deception as a core component of strategic planning. In the realm of intelligence, Bodyguard set new standards for the sophistication and scale of counterintelligence operations. The double-cross system, in particular, became a model for future intelligence agencies. The idea that an entire enemy spy network could be turned against its self-influenced Cold War espionage tactics for decades to come. The operation also highlighted the critical importance of inter-agency cooperation. The success of Bodyguard relied on seamless collaboration between military planners, intelligence agencies, and even civilian organizations. This holistic approach to warfare and intelligence gathering became a hallmark of post-war military and intelligence operations. In the broader context of history, Operation Bodyguard speaks of the power of imagination in warfare. It demonstrated that, in the right circumstances, a well-crafted lie could be as potent as any weapon. This understanding has shaped military and political thinking ever since, influencing everything from Cold War propaganda campaigns to modern information warfare. The ethical implications of Bodyguard have also been the subject of much debate. While its success in saving lives is undeniable, it raised complex questions about the nature of truth and deception in wartime. These discussions continue to inform modern debates about the use of disinformation in conflicts. Perhaps most significantly, Bodyguard changed our understanding of what constitutes a battlefield. By extending the conflict into the realm of perception and belief, it showed that wars could be won or lost in the minds of commanders as much as on the physical battlefield. This insight has only grown more relevant in our current age of information warfare and cyber conflicts. In the end, Operation Bodyguard stands as one of the most successful deception campaigns in military history. Its legacy lives on in military academies, intelligence agencies, and strategic think tanks around the world. It remains a powerful reminder that in warfare, as in life, things are not always as they seem, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon of all is the one that exists only in the mind of the enemy.